Join me in welcoming Elise Woodworth. Hey, Elise, how you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, start us off by telling us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, I am the president and founder of Woodworth Enterprises, where since 2014, we've been fulfilling our mission to ignite tomorrow's leaders, inspire today's, and help develop teams that shape history. This mission came out of a passion for helping organizations improve their culture. And how did I get into that? I was working in a pretty bad culture. And I looked around and I said, I can do something to help people realize that they're in business, not battle.
So, what does that mean to you? We should say, before we go any further, the book is called Business Not Battle for Nonprofit Board Members. And you can get it today for free on Amazon. The link is in the thing, and I will put it in the description in a little bit too. So, what does it mean to you that it's business, not battle?
So, what I'd noticed is that a lot of times people get stuck. They get frustrated, they get anxious, they get stressed out, and it's meetings, it's Zoom calls, it's reports, presentations, all of these different things. And you add on top of that personal relationship. And relationship is so important. But when it goes wrong, it creates tension and anxiety. And that is a battle. That's what I like to call a battle. And people get stuck there and they stop seeing that it doesn't have to be uh, about that relationship, about battle all the time, that it can just be about business, focusing on a mission and getting the work done. Specifically in nonprofits, I've noticed that there is sometimes a lot of tension in the boardroom. A lot of times you'll see boards of directors and you have a really diverse group, which is great. But without the correct culture, let's say, without the standardized how we communicate and what we're focused on, things can start to take a really tense, stressful turn. And it starts to feel like battle, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay, so typically, not always, but typically when you're talking a nonprofit, even the board members are doing it because it's something they're passionate about, something they care about. It isn't the traditional boardroom where, it's dog eat dog, we'll kill the person next to us if we have to make another dollar. Um, and yet, it tends a lot of times, even in nonprofits, to turn that way, doesn't it?
It does. And what it really boils down to is conflict. Um, what happens is a really negative, or you get into relationship conflict where you have a personal issue with someone and you lose sight of that mission. And what I would like to have people do, and what I encourage everyone to do, is focus on constructive conflict where you're working on an issue and not an individual. There are some really simple ways that I talk about in the book that board members can become more aware of and recognize those battles as they kind of come up, because they do. Those obstacles, those hurdles that we all deal with in our life, those come up. And part of it is recognizing that you're in those situations and then being able to ask the right questions and encourage other people to be effective for the organization instead of getting stuck and mired in these relationship conflicts that crop up so frequently.
Makes a lot of sense. So let's back up for just a second. Tell us a little bit about your background and all the things you did that led up to Woodworth Enterprises.
Sure. So we'll start here at the present. Working with nonprofits was something that had been in the undercurrent for me for a long time. I never recognized how I could help in the nonprofit industry until really quite recently, with sort of the end of 2021 and moving into this year, when I recognized that I could change my processes to help nonprofits specifically. Before that, I had been helping for-profit companies and other organizations work on improving their culture. And I did that through a process I call the Ignite model. And it combines gathering insight, developing innovative solutions, and engaging the group to really create that transformational change that so many organizations are looking for. I shared a little bit earlier, but I recognized that I could do that while I was working as a contractor in a very negative work environment. And I had completed my MBA. I was just joining my first board as a nonprofit board member. And I realized that I didn't have to stay in that negative or toxic environment. I didn't have to stay in that battle, that I could focus on business. And so that's why I chose to start my own company. Prior to that, I was an Air Force logistics officer, where during my time in the service, I recognized my passion for leadership, for growing young leaders, and teaching people the skills and giving them the tools to be an effective team. Before that, I would have had no clue. I was not a business. I didn't have a business mindset, but through the military and through my education at the Virginia Military Institute, I was introduced to the concepts, the functions and attitudes, as we would say at the I, the functions and attitudes of leadership, and bringing those to other people and recognizing that passion while serving my country was really wonderful. While I was at VMI, I was a biology major. I liked to study ecology, botany, horticulture, these types of things. And while those are still passions of mine, they have become more of a hobby as the leadership, the business, and the really sharing that mindset with other people has taken more of a front row seat.
So you went on, and what did you do when you were in the military?
I was a logistics officer, so they call us the jack of all trades. And in the Air Force, it combined supply, transportation, and then the traditional logistician career fields into one giant career field specialty.
So basically, for the Air Force, you were the person that made sure that there weren't supply chain issues.
Right. I had a lot of amazing opportunities in the Air Force that, as a civilian, I don't think I ever would have even known existed. Project management, for one. I had no idea. I had not been exposed to the idea of project management until one of my commanders said, maybe you should focus on this. And it's something you can learn, and you do it really well already, so study it. And that's what I focused my master's in business on, was project management. Turned out to be a really great fit for my life and has served me so well in understanding those concepts.
I love that. We have an interesting question here. Does your book explore the power of implicit bias to sabotage communication, trust, and relationships?
Well, not specifically. I will say that concept, that idea there is a battle, is a real and true, honest battle. And I think the way to confront that sort of thing would be by asking thoughtful questions, which is something that the book does cover. How to ask questions, when to ask questions, what to say, when to say it. And as you identify those situations where things are taking a negative turn, or something doesn't hit you quite right, rubs you the wrong way, those are the times where you stand up and you say, let's take a look at that a little deeper. Let's go back and dive into that issue and ask questions about it to gain understanding. Because a lot of times people have those biases and they're not aware. That's why they call it unconscious bias. But if you ask the questions, if you encounter that from someone, a lot of times it's not intentional. And so asking those questions not only grows your strength in person, in your ability to continue to grow and ask more questions, but it helps that person recognize that their behavior might not be in line with what they want to be projecting or what they want to say, or it might not be coming across the right way. So they need to change that. But without the awareness, you end up stuck in that battle. But it's about business, isn't it?
And just as a follow up, Stacy Walton wants you to know thank you for writing the book she knows that we so desperately need it in the world today.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit more about that concept. Now, a person has to get the book in order to be able to learn everything, but much the same as asking you which of your children is your favorite, which I won't make you do. What's your, yeah, right. What is the part of the book that is the most exciting for you right now, this moment?
So I get most excited about the part where I talk about being an advocate. And this is something that I am still growing with as well, which is why it's really fun to have a book that helps me learn how to be my own advocate that I've written for myself and others. Is interesting. But in marketing this book, for example, the mission of getting the word out there is something that I needed to do. It was my mission to market the book. And if I didn't talk about it, no one was going to ask me about the book or about what I was up to. So I had to become my own advocate and share that. Just as I talk in the book about it being so important for board members to become an advocate, a champion for their organization's mission. That is what the role I think of a board member really is. There's the governing, there's the fiduciary responsibilities, but organizations, nonprofits specifically, need advocates. And it's the board members who are in the role, they're in a position to grow the network, to spread the word about the mission. And if they're not willing or ready or able to stand up and say, this is a mission I'm proud of, this is something I'm excited about, then that is something that needs to be looked at as well, because that's what's so needed for each one of us. There are things we'll stand up for. There are things we'll let go. And as a board member, I think it's really important to be able to stand up for your organization's mission.
So important. Well, let's piggyback on that and talk about what happens to the organization when the board members don't stand up for it.
It's pretty flat. I have to tell you. It's really frustrating as a staff person. Part of this book and getting this ready, this is not just my experience. I interviewed many different organizations, many different roles, many different board members, different staff roles, different levels of experience, and asked them as well, what's a good board member? What makes a productive board? What makes an unproductive board? And what are some of those bad qualities that you wish didn't exist? And so I've combined all of those answers and it influenced the content of the book to kind of share that. But what happens when a board member or a board collectively isn't standing up for the mission? There are a couple different things. There's scope creep, mission creep, if you will, which we talk about in project management a lot. But it's where if your mission is point A, you kind of lose sight of that and start to do what is interesting or what you want, and you end up not really achieving your mission or realizing your vision. If that mission isn't part of the focus, it's really easy to go away from. Another thing that can happen is a lot of those battles start to creep in without a mission focus, without that unifying value of mission, of advocacy. There are a lot of loose ends crop up, and you start to not want to go to the board meetings or not want to engage with the organization because it's stressful, because there are battles there. And by recognizing that and doing some of these things that help show you're an advocate and become an advocate for your organization, those start to clear up. And instead of those Steve came today and he was just against the whole agenda from the beginning, and I'm just not going to the next board meeting. Instead of that sort of attitude, you have something where it's we have to realize, we have to figure out how we can get more meals to children in need. We have to figure out how we can, unlock the cure to cancer. Pick your mission. But if it's about the people, it gets stressful really quick. If it's about the mission, it's a lot easier as a board to focus.
So I'm going totally from personal experience here a few times, but what do you do when you're on a board with a person who has no interest in anything other than themselves? I mean, what do you do?
When they bring their own battle, when they are the battle. So one of the first things I would say in that situation is ask the thoughtful questions, and have a conversation with them. I think conversation is really the best weapon, if you can excuse the pun, the best weapon you have against those battles is communication. So opening up and asking that person, what's your focus here? Why do you come to the board meetings? But asking those thoughtful questions that are going to be open-ended and thought-provoking for that person might be all it takes to flip the switch. Might be all it takes for them to wake up and say, maybe give them a copy of the book. Maybe it could be the missing link for them. Because I believe each person has so much potential. And if they're on the board, if they've said yes to that role and responsibility, then there should be a way to unlock that potential. If there's not, and if they can't come up with a good answer, it starts the conversation towards, are you really necessary? Are you really engaged here? Or could we find someone else to fill this seat?
It's like a coup then.
Those thoughtful questions can be used in a lot of different ways, but in this case, it would be more like a wake-up call. Do you have a passion for the mission? Or explain your passion for the mission. And having them think about those things. And if they don't have that, if they aren't willing to stand up and be an advocate, then maybe it's not the best fit.
I'll even give you a perfect example, and this is totally from a church board, but, big nonprofit. I worked at a church and was on the board where, the church grew from 7 people to 130 in about 9 months. So wow. Huge, explosive growth for any organization, but especially in a church in a little town that, that was almost everybody in the whole town was going because it was just a cool place to be. Mm-hmm. But one of the main board members, he had been everything. He was basically the director of every group and everything in there. Mm-hmm. And it was quote unquote his church. You know what I mean? And it's that whole ownership that's such a good thing, but that, when the organization grows what you want it to, now they've got to somehow be gently persuaded to not keep holding on to that stuff. You know what I mean?
So this is great, Steve. It all goes back to asking thoughtful questions. It really does. That's the beginning of the Ignite model that I talked about in the beginning of this conversation, is asking thoughtful questions, getting people to think through what's best for the mission, what's best for the organization, and having that awareness of their organization and that awareness of themselves and their own personal limitations and what they can offer, that makes it so that it's not a relationship issue. It's not a battle issue. It's about business, or in this case, faith and religion. It's about growing that community. It's not about, the pressure or the esteem of having that, director role in each part. It's about growing the mission. And if it's for the mission's sake, it can be a lot easier to explain, we need someone else to take over this particular role, or we need more people to help because you can't do everything. And what you're doing is really great. So pick your favorite. Where do you want to focus your energy and attention? And let's find more support for those other areas of the mission that might be suffering because of time limitations, because of, energy. And burnout is real, and something, especially in nonprofits and churches too, that you don't want to run into. You don't want a burnt out minister or an exhausted director. You want to have people that have energy, that are engaged and able to accomplish their mission and what they set their mind to.
So I always like to leave people in action, and this is the thought that comes to my mind. You can answer something different if you think it's a stupid question. But for the person who has decided, okay, I'm going to do it, I'm going to help out this organization, what should day one really look like for a new board member?
So day one really starts before day one. Day one starts by picking up this book when you are asked to join a board. And some of the earlier chapters, we talk about awareness of yourself. And it goes back to, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Why are you being brought onto the board? And understanding that can really equip you to be the most effective board member that you can be for that organization, because you have a clear understanding of what you're bringing to the table, why you're being asked to join, or why you're coming to the table. And you come in ready to ask the questions, to be an advocate, and to encourage other people to be effective for the organization as well.
So leave us with some words of encouragement for whether they're new or they've been in there forever, for board members of nonprofits.
So words of encouragement, I think, recognizing that you don't have to be in battle, that it can just be about business, is something that you can pick that mindset. You can pick up that mindset, You can pick up the business, not battle mindset anytime. It doesn't have to be when you start day one or 2 years in, when you're starting to feel like you really understand things. And it could be afterwards, when you are in the thick of things and you recognize one day that maybe it doesn't have to be done the way it's always been done. You can ignite change in your organization. You can encourage people to be effective along with you. You can spread the news and be an advocate for your organization. And it all starts with recognizing the mindset that you're in can be business, not battle.
The book is called Business Not Battle for Nonprofit Board Members. It's written by Elise Woodworth. It's available today for free. In fact, let's just put the link in there in case you didn't see it in the description. Go get your copy right now. Elise, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.